If you look at the fall 2017 TV lineup, there seems to be a new dominant genre in town. As things become increasingly contentious at home, American audiences want to look elsewhere for their dramatic needs. Last year, 3 networks fought to please the niche of people interested in watching a military series. CW gave audiences Valor, CBS has SEAL Team, and NBC has The Brave. In 2016, the History Network premiered another SEAL-focused show called Six, and USA has Shooter, also on its 2nd season. Let me just quickly say, this video isn't a critique on any of these shows. I honestly don't care if they're any good. I'm just interested in the fact that they're all coming out now. While there have always been TV shows and movies about the military, this new group depicts things in a uniform, almost propaganda-like manner.
Were you raised Muslim, Jazz?
I was raised a New Yorker.
Now I promise I'm not trying to be political, because most of these shows were likely developed and even shot before Trump became president. I'm not saying that with a Republican in office, our society is more tolerant of the military than before. The truth is we've always been obsessed. It's just more apparent now. Even as public support for different wars has dwindled, general military support has increased. While there have been a few dips, overall public trust in the military has gone up 8 points since 2000, beating out small business, the press, and even the Supreme Court as the most trusted institution in the US. Since no one really walks around bad-mouthing the troops during war, it's understandable for networks to think there's an audience for this genre, because even if conflict is unpopular, soldiers aren't. One thing these shows do to keep audiences empathetic is to constantly remind viewers about the people left waiting at home. Each series, and to a certain extent movies about the military, never squarely focus on the soldiers themselves. They always include dramatic families and sad children to give the characters something noble to fight for. It doesn't matter how brutal or dickish a character is written, if they have a family waiting for them to come back, they're presented like a bona fide hero.
Where's Daddy?
Daddy is on a mission.
One of the subtle, recurring themes in these shows is the idea that violence saves the day. MASH, a touching show about the Korean War, is still considered a classic because it focused on the human side of conflict instead of glorifying violence. Understandably, diplomacy and economic cooperation don't make for explosive or sexy television, but modern military shows take the action to an excessive level. The protagonist in Shooter, which follows someone forced to clear his name after being framed for murdering the Ukrainian president, often acts as if he's still a soldier, shooting guns and kicking butt simply because he thinks he has no other options. Giving life to the NRA slogan, "The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun," these programs portray people who shoot at their problems as heroic. In an attempt to seem strong, the main character on SEAL Team even mocks his therapist, reinforcing the idea that tough guys shoot at their problems instead of talk about them.
Mr. Hayes.
Oh, look at that. Time's up. It was just starting to get really good.
Not only is violence presented as an ideal solution for complex problems, the series often muddy up perceptions of real-life situations. While the principled soldiers in The Brave may make sure an area is clear of innocent people before striking, the fact is, civilian casualties have gone up overseas as a result of increased airstrikes and fewer boots on the ground. According to Air Wars, a nonprofit that tracks overseas engagements, civilian casualty rates in Iraq and Syria have been on a steady increase every month since August of 2014, and those numbers don't seem to be slowing down. Additionally, all of these shows depict soldiers risking their lives, but fail to highlight how many private contractors fight alongside them. In Afghanistan alone, there were 3 times as many private contractors compared to service members in 2015, and in 2016, they made up 75% of the fighting force there. We all love and support the troops, but it seems government-hired mercenaries aren't popular enough for their own shows quite yet. Moving away from TV, the military has been represented in an overwhelmingly positive light in recent movies. There aren't films like Apocalypse Now or Full Metal Jacket that display the intense mental anguish involved in service, despite the fact that back in 2008, RAND said 1 in 5 Iraq and Afghan veterans have PTSD or major depression. Now we get blatantly patriotic movies like 13 Hours and American Sniper that emphasize the soldier's rugged individualism instead of tackling political issues or the emotional toll of serving. Sometimes there are gems like Thank You for Your Service or Last Flag Flying that touch on the vulnerability of being a soldier, but films like that are exceptions to the norm at this point. According to a Freedom of Information Act request made by Spy Culture, the Department of Defense has worked on at least 800 movies since World War II to ensure the military is portrayed according to their heroic standards in everything from Iron Man to Top Gun. While all these new shows have technical advisors associated with the military, it's unclear if the DoD is directly involved with how they portray certain things. But looking at their history in the film business, it's obvious the military wants to convey a certain image of themselves, and they know entertainment is a powerful tool to convey it to the masses. Obviously, fiction isn't the only way the military creeps into our media consumption. The recent kneeling scandal in the NFL has brought attention to the fact that the Defense Department has given millions of dollars to various sporting leagues over the years, classified as paid patriotism, to implement events like flyovers, flag unfurlings, and soldier appreciation ceremonies during games. Sports are already intrinsically connected with nationalism. Just look at how charged up people get during the Olympics or World Cup. So giving these events a militaristic edge is extremely manipulative. Pledging allegiance to a flag or watching thousands of people on TV do it as fighter jets zoom overhead is a powerful, calculated moment that presents the military in a righteous, family-friendly light for everyone to glob onto. Even journalists, the people whose job it is to inform the public about the accomplishments and failures of the military, often end up under the Pentagon's thumb.
Well, that was a rather large explosion. Yeah.
Despite the fact the Bill of Rights protects freedom of the press, there's a common complaint among reporters who travel with the military that they lose certain editorial powers.
And I think in many cases there is some truth to that. They have their message that they want to get across. They want to be on message. They would like you to be on message. That's what they do. That is the purpose. The media is a tool of what they are doing.
When reporters are on official trips, their travel can be restricted, they sometimes can only interview certain people, and they're reliant on the military's word to include accurate information from official sources. While it's up to journalists to push back and search for outside voices, it's clear the military knows the press, just like any other form of media, can be used as a mouthpiece.
Our mission is to support you for your mission, which is to report nice things about us during the underway.
At the end of the day, we're living through one of the most militaristic periods in American history. Not only do we have a president with a large button,
Thank you.
but we have military officials creeping into some of the country's highest civilian positions. John Kelly, a 4-star general, is Trump's chief of staff, and General Mattis, somehow one of the most level-headed members of the administration, despite being nicknamed Mad Dog, is the current Secretary of Defense. Just be aware and mindful of how things related to war and foreign policy are presented in the media, especially as the people in charge slowly coalesce into a single viewpoint.
If you want to go after General Kelly, that's up to you, but I think that if you want to get into a debate with a 4-star Marine general, I think that's something highly inappropriate.
Some people may say we shouldn't question the military, but it's silly not to ask ourselves what they gain from being so prominent in our media consumption, especially at a time like this. Hey everyone, thank you for sticking around and watching that video. I did realize as I was editing it though that I actually forgot to mention video games and comic books. So I'll probably be coming back to this topic in a few months with a specific comic book. And with that said, I'm actually planning on releasing a lot more content this year, a lot more comic book content this year, and I hope you guys are excited and I hope you stick around. All right, thanks again.